Hi everyone, I'm Justin Peterson with Growing Personnel. I've heard some news reports recently that say that there are indications that some of us might be reaching the limit of how much quarantine we can handle. Apparently phone calls to divorce attorneys are way up. So I'd like to share 3 ideas today on how we can improve the communication with those people we're confined with during this extended stay-at-home period. And be sure to stick around to the end because I do have a gift for you today. Some of you might be familiar with the scene from the Charles Dickens story where the young orphan Oliver Twist is holding up his empty food bowl before the master of the workhouse and he says, "Please, sir, I want some more." Wanting more is something we're all familiar with. We know that the process of personal growth begins with a desire to be, do, and have more. And when having more is the result of being more and doing more, it doesn't cause a problem. What does cause a problem is when all of a sudden we have more of something in our life, but we weren't prepared to handle it. A classic example is somebody that wins the lottery. All of a sudden they have more money in their life, but they weren't prepared for it. And it doesn't take long for their true character to start being revealed because of the choices that they make. Well, I think we're in a similar situation now with the coronavirus quarantine period. All of a sudden people have more time that they're spending with others in a confined setting, and this is not a situation that they were prepared to handle. Kids are home from school full time. Parents are having to work from home and then still keep an eye on the kids to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And with everybody home, more meals and snacks have to be planned, prepared, and cleaned up after. It's no wonder our stress level is high and the relationships with those people we're confined with might be suffering. But I think there are 3 things that we can do that can improve our communication with the people that we're confined with. The first thing I think we can do is something Stephen Covey talks about in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said we need to seek first to understand, then to be understood. In fact, he said that was the single most important principle he had learned in the field of interpersonal relations, and that single principle was the key to effective interpersonal communication. Most of us don't listen with the intent to understand. We listen with the intent to reply. We're either speaking or we're preparing to speak. And when we communicate like that, we miss hearing the message that's being said or the underlying theme that's being communicated. We don't have time today to go into paradigms, but there is something we all do need to keep in mind. And that is, we all view the world or the situation that we're in not as it is, but as we are. My wife and I recently celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. While I think we know each other quite well, we do think differently. Now, it's not a case where one person thinks incorrectly and the other person thinks correctly. We just think differently. We might be speaking the same language, but the interpretation of the words that are being used could be quite different. To achieve mutual understanding, we have to be sure we know how the other person is interpreting what's being said. Stephen Covey went on to say that next to physical survival, the most important thing to human beings is psychological survival. We all have some basic needs, and they are to be affirmed, to be validated, to be understood, and to be appreciated. And once those basic needs are met, then we can move on to influencing and problem solving. The second thing I think we can do is something that Viktor Frankl talks about in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. And you might be familiar with Viktor Frankl's story, but he and his family were prisoners in a Nazi concentration camp, and some of his family members did not survive the ordeal. Viktor Frankl himself witnessed great pain and suffering and evil, and yet he was able to maintain his faith and his positive outlook on life. And he said that in between a stimulus and a response is a space. And in that space, we have the freedom to choose what our response will be. While we're confined to close quarters with other people, there are a lot of things that can push our buttons or are triggers for us. It takes a great deal of intentionality, but if we choose to, we can delay our response for a few seconds and choose a response that's proactive rather than reactive. Many people are on automatic pilot. I've heard people say things like, well, that person said that bad thing to me, so I had to respond in that negative way. Well, it may be how they usually respond, but it isn't how they had to. We have a choice, and we have to start being accountable for how we think and how we react. I've heard Paul Martinelli say, if somebody else is making you feel sad, glad, or mad, you've been had. We give a lot of power away when we believe that other people can make us feel a certain way. We have to take back that power so we can transform ourselves into the person that we really want to be. You may have heard the phrase that life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we respond. There are many things that happen in our lives that we have no control over, including the current coronavirus pandemic. But what we do have control over is how we're going to let it affect us and the attitude that we're going to have towards it. The third thing I think we can do is something my mother used to tell me as I was a youngster growing up. She said, before we speak, there are 3 questions that we need to ask ourselves. Is what I am about to say truthful, full of truth, or does it only have bits of truth or some semblance to the truth? Or am I making assumptions or using generalities? Am I letting gossip creep into my conversation? Question number 2 is what I am about to say helpful? It might even be truthful, but is it something the other person needs to hear right now? Is it something that's going to build them up or support them? And question number 3, is what I am about to say kind? Is this something that I would appreciate hearing from somebody that would say it to me? Do I truly have the other person's best interests at heart? So in summary, I think if we can keep these 3 things in mind, 1, seek first to understand, then to be understood. 2, stop in the space between a stimulus and a response and choose a response that's proactive rather than reactive. And 3, before we speak, ask ourselves, is what I'm about to say truthful, helpful, and kind? We'll be able to get through this coronavirus quarantine period with improved communication with those people that we are confined with, and we'll be able to keep those cherished relationships intact. Well, I hope you got something valuable out of the lesson today, and if you did, I challenge you to implement it in your life right away, and I'm challenging all of us to see how far we can grow. Today I do have a gift for you. If you go to www.growingpersonnel.com/personal growth gift, there's a password there that you can use to access week 1 of my online course, Thinking at the Speed of Life. Within week 1 is a personal growth self-assessment tool that you can use, and it helps to reveal your character, strengths, and weaknesses. If you liked the video, please click the like button and share it. Thank you.